You're listening to the Prospect Blueprint, exclusively on twoadays.com, the #1 source for college coach reviews and ratings, as well as recruiting tips and resources for college athletes. Have a coach you'd like to leave a review for or research before you make an expensive decision? Only at twoadays.com. Hello and welcome to the Prospect Blueprint. I'm Kelly Kleiman and my battery mate is Mr. Rick Dempsey, 24-year MLB vet and fan favorite with the Twins, Yankees, Orioles, Brewers, and Dodgers, and 1983 World Series MVP for the Baltimore Orioles. And we have a Baltimore Oriole fan with us today. We're going to get into that in 1 second, but our guest tonight is someone who I consider one of the best young head coaches in the country. I was watching his club in the postseason year before last, looked over to my kids and said, these guys are good. This coach knows what he's doing. And he was the 2021 Atlantic Sun Conference Coach of the Year. Now, he owns a 195 and 116 record. That's a .627 winning percentage with 3 NCAA regional appearances, the most of any coach in Liberty program history. I'm reading this directly off of their website, basically. The Flames have also collected 3 regional wins during those appearances, downing Tennessee and Duke a couple times. His team also, and this is crucial, averages over a 3.0 GPA. They play in a highly competitive conference, and he is a highly talented coach. He is Scott Jackson. Dan, glad to meet you.
Well, glad to be on here with you guys. I mean, just always love exposure for our program and just really appreciate the opportunity.
Glad to give it to you. Rick, you got the first pitch.
I know it. One of the big reasons why I'm not a college coach, Scotty, is because what I'm going to ask you about is something that I just don't know if I could ever do. I just don't have the knowledge of it. How's the summer recruiting process going? Because that's something I would find so hard to do.
Well, it is. It's a challenge. And I think if you don't have a passion for it and you don't embrace it, a lot of people from the outside looking in think when we're done in the spring and, you know, the season's over with, we have time to relax and enjoy. And quite honestly, it ramps up to another level where you're out watching players and your time with your family is probably more limited during the summer than it is during the spring. And so, you know, it's always a challenge. I don't really like our travel ball model and what that looks like. And I don't think it prepares kids for what truly is ahead of them with the college baseball model and how we go about getting ready to play and what practice looks like and how challenging that is. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but at the end of the day, life's about relationships, and that's what recruiting boils down to. And if you've got to have good relationships and you've got to be able to have people you trust and, you know, people that want to recommend players that are, number one, good enough, but they're the right fit for your program. So great question. It's a huge challenge. I think that's the 30,000 foot, you know, take on that. We could go into that pretty detailed in whatever way you want, but you know, for me, that's what it looks like. And you know, the summer's always it's interesting. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
What events do you prioritize, and what is the criteria that you use basically to determine where you're going to recruit talent? Now, would that be a PG event, travel ball tourneys, college summer leagues for portal and JUCO players?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, you look into it now and you've got the high school, you know, the high school circuit, I call it, you know, where you're bouncing around with different events. Now you've got junior college players who are, you know, pretty much their time is during the fall to be evaluated. And then you've got the transfer portal. So you've got 3 different entities there that you have to balance and you have to look and try to see what meets your team's needs. I think, you know, for us, the big thing is just finding kids that are interested in Liberty. I think our success has really helped us on the recruiting trail. I think it's opened doors for us. You know, I took the job in 16 and, you know, we had the 17 and 18 season where we were just okay. And then we finally got it going and people noticed that. And so with that has come access to better players, you know, and trying to find those kids that are the right fit. It's really been, it's been interesting. You know, we've got the recruiting budget to travel from coast to coast. And, you know, for us, it's really picking and choosing our battles. So those events are really, where can we see the most players for the bang for our buck? Do we go to Atlanta? Do we go to the Perfect Game events? I was at a Legion game the other night, just, you know, American Legion ball, which was my best experience as a player. And that's something that I kind of just sat back and thought, wow, 25 years into coaching and I'm watching a Legion game. This is pretty refreshing. And I think Legion ball prepares you for college ball because it's a lot of games and they hit on the field and they take BP and they do it the way we do it, which is contrary to travel ball. So that's not knocking travel ball. I think there's a lot of really good coaches and I think there's a lot of really good players out there. So it's a balance. To sit here and say, here's where we go and here's what we're going to do. It changes every year. It changes with our needs and it changes, with the talent and the players that are interested.
Scotty, I know all of you coaches, you know who the top prospects are, but how do you convince a guy, to choose Liberty over a lot of the SEC, the Big 12, all the big divisions, the ACC? How do you convince them? This is where you've got to be a real magician.
No, that's another great question, man. You guys are good. I mean, that's exactly what our challenge is every day, right? Is if we're going to keep our program at the level that it's at, we've got to get those players that are being recruited by bigger schools. And when I say bigger, they're ACC, SEC, recruits. So, that's the relationship part. I think you have to connect with kids. I think you have to be real. I think you have to get in their world and you have to have some interaction with them and their parents. I think the big thing for us is to identify those kids early. I'm not hey, we're going to offer you in your freshman or sophomore year type of coach, but I think if you can make those connections and our facilities really bridge the gap for me, that's really where I think the difference is at Liberty is our facilities and our support staff and everything that you have here. It's an SEC, ACC look, probably better than some of those schools in that league. And so for us to be able to say, hey, you can reach all your goals here and you might have a chance to play sooner here than you would at an ACC or SEC school, that's our niche. Sometimes it relates to players and it resonates with them and their families. Other times it doesn't, and that's fine. I think, again, it goes back to, hey, how bad do you want to be here? Because we've got a great place. And if we got to beg you to come here, maybe this isn't the right place for you. And for us to be able to I think, hang our hat on the relationships of, hey, we want you here. And I think you trust us and we trust you, then, hopefully it's a match. And we've had some success with that. And I think the transfer portal has been good to us. There's kids coming from those schools that they don't feel like there's a big drop off with facilities or the resources that they have to get better. And so it's been kind of a blend of everything that's allowed us to stay competitive. It's one thing to go to a regional. It's a whole nother thing. It's like getting to the big leagues, right? It's one thing to get to the big leagues. It's a whole nother thing to stay there. And I think that's how we've kind of viewed things. It's one thing to get to a regional. It's a whole nother thing to continue to do it year after year. And that's our challenge.
Scotty, we've talked to a lot of coaches so far, and it's kind of a split decision, on these showcases. I mean, they've been sprouting up all over the place the last couple of years. What's your take on those? Can you get anything out of them?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can identify tools. And so if I go to a showcase and I see a kid can run, or man, there's some bat speed there, or his actions are really good on defense and I think he can defend and I think he's got a chance to stay at short or he's got a chance to be in center field. You check those boxes, and then I think it's watching gameplay after the showcase that really is the challenge for us, because some teams will throw out offers and they'll go after kids just based on the tools. For us, I want to see you play. I want to see you struggle. I want to see you, be able to hit in those situations that we were talking about, like with a runner on second and nobody out. Like, do you play for your team or is it all about you? And so I think there's some of those things that you can identify, some intangibles, I think, from the gameplay type of perspective that are hard to evaluate in a showcase deal, when really I think a showcase is based on the tools jumping out and then, hey, let's go watch him play some.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of smaller D1 teams are relatively strapped for funds, and they tend to recruit regionally. Fortunately, you're able to go cross country to a certain extent, but for those that aren't as lucky as you, that leaves a lot of potential talent out there. that they don't have they have very limited access, if not any access to, because emails don't seem to be answered or really gone through very frequently. It beckons the question, what means do you have to ID talent that falls outside of your travel area that might not only be a game changer for your program, but secure your chances? And I don't think you need any particular ball player to secure your chances for a contract extension. I think you're doing just fine. But we're looking at talented guys that might fall beyond your purview. How do you reach them? How can they contact you and get a look-see?
Well, I think the big thing for me is the email. We've got an email account. It's just lubaseball@liberty.edu. I check it every 48 hours and just try to kind of glean through it. And, if they can attach some video, video is great. The email doesn't have to be elaborate, but, just kind of reaching out to us, expressing their interest and saying, hey, I think I can play at your level. I mean, confidence is king, right? So kids that think they're good enough, I like that. I like kids that, kind of exude that and they show that in an email. And then all of a sudden we click on it and man, this kid's looks like a pretty good player. One thing leads to the next, right? And we end up, in an event where they're there, or we go watch a junior college event and, you just really start to glean through the emails. But then I think the big thing too is just the relationships you have through baseball. I mean, baseball is a small world. I mean, it doesn't take 2 or 3 names and all of a sudden you can connect with people. And when you start to find people you can trust that say, hey, this kid can play for you, and you trust that evaluation, then I think the onus is on us to get on an airplane or get in the car and go watch a kid play. And, it's going to boil down to roster need, but, at the end of the day, we all need pitching, especially if it's left-handed. And, you're always looking for premium athletes in the middle of the field. So, that's kind of where we start with the recruiting process. And, these kids, again, it's a smaller world than I think, most kids kind of look at it. I think it's daunting, right? Like 300 Division I programs, like how am I going to give myself a chance? But I think if you're around the right people that have the right connections, one thing can lead to another. I've seen it. We've had kids show up at our camp that I didn't know them from Adam, and he was just a 14th round pick, by the Detroit Tigers. So, I've seen examples of that throughout my career. And if you're good enough, we're going to find you. The industry's good. We know who can play. And the same thing goes for the pro side of it. If you're good enough, you're going to get drafted, you're going to get seen. And I think that's really trusting people around you and having the right connections.
Let's discuss the paradigm shift that seems to be taking place in college sports. It's called the transfer portal. It's also called the NIL.
Boy.
Right? I mean, that's
a
whole kettle of fish. How does that affect your program? Now, it might not affect it now, but let's kind of break out our crystal ball and ask our gypsy. Because right now there's a lot of kids who have that travel ball mentality, right? So they're looking to go, that transfer portal is always there for them. If they don't play their freshman year, they could just bail. And then you've got the NIL. Now, we know in football it's working, and I happen to know for a fact that there's a Big Ten team right now that's discussing dumping some big NIL dollars into their program to pick them up off the mat. Are you more inclined to scan JUCOs for more experienced players who can step right in and run less of a portal bail, or do you focus more on high school guys, or are you not too worried about that right now because you do have a good program?
Yeah, I think the transfer portal. I think the transfer portal is good for a program like Liberty. I think we can identify the needs of our program. I think you can stay older in the transfer portal. If you need to go out and get an outfielder or a first baseman or a catcher that keeps you a little bit older. And again, our facilities are so good, it's not much of a difference from the ACC or the SEC to Liberty. So I think our niche there is really good. And we've had some really good ones now, dating back to, 21 after COVID. And now, moving forward, we try to, find our niche there and get the right guys. But there's definitely a gap that is starting to widen between schools that have facilities and access to NIL money versus schools that don't. And I think that's the biggest That's the biggest concern for me with our sport is where are we going and what's this going to look like in 4 or 5 years when I think there's some things coming down the pipe for our sport with the number of countable coaches. That is looking like that's going to be lifted where you can have as many coaches as you want. So what does that look like for, a school in the SEC that's got several big leaguers that are done playing and they can come back and help coach? The other part of it is it looks like we're going to go to a head count sport within the next couple of years, which means there's 25 to 27 full scholarships available for baseball, which is fantastic. However, your conference has to say, this is what we are going to allow teams in our league to do, and then will your school fund it? So I think you're going to see this gap start to continue to widen, and where that leaves, some mid-major programs, I'm not really sure. I think, I know for a fact we're blessed to have the resources here at Liberty where I think we can continue to climb and be in that upper echelon of schools and mid-majors that continue to challenge for a chance to be in a super regional. But there's so many balls in the air here right now, Kelly, and it's really, it's going to be interesting here these next 2 or 3 years of where our sport goes and what that looks like and where that leads some programs.
Well, real quick, Rick, I can imagine a coach looking at a player saying, good numbers, 3.5 GPA, hit 450, on base percentage 475. And he's got 250,000 followers on Instagram. We could get some NIL money because he's a good brand rep with all that following. It's going to get pretty nuts. Anyway, go ahead, Rick. Sorry, I got into your time.
No, that's all right. At this point, what the thoughts that went through my mind when I was managing AAA ball for 4 years was, how am I going to get more wins out of this ball club I know I'm going to get going into next season? And I know those thoughts are on your mind too. So let's talk a little about your ball club. You got any good ones really coming back? And really, what are you looking for mostly that's going to help you get those wins that you need?
Well, I'm a pitching, and I just believe that pitching and defense wins games. And so I'm always going to start at the surface of, can we pitch and defend at the level that we expect? And we led the country in defense in 2021. We were at 973, 974 this past year. So it was a little bit of a drop from that 984, but I just think that's what wins games. And so when I step back and I look at our roster, I'd rather try to beat you 2-1 than try to outslug you. That's just my personal. I know you played for Earl and trying to get the.
I feel like you're thinking the way I always thought behind home plate. If that big guy's out there on the mound, hang tight until we get to the bullpen. We'll find some way to beat him. That's the one-run game that's missing at the major league level. Go ahead and finish what you were going to say.
So, our ballpark's not conducive to the 3-run jack like Earl used to love. But, that's always, I don't know, that's just that's how my teeth were cut with coaching, is that you limit your opponent's opportunities to score. So I'm going to try to always look at our roster from that perspective first. Don't get me wrong. I love the 3-run homer and I love the chance to have some offense, but that's what our success has been built around here. And that's where we started. And, here we are, and I just don't know any different. So when it comes to the transfer portal, like you have to look at that and you have to find ways. Yeah. The transfer portal is free agency at the college level. Let's just call it what it is. It's free agency. And so, you get down to that and you look at it and it's really the highest bidder and the guy that's got the best facilities. And, some kids are making those decisions based on those things. They think the grass is greener on the other side, but you really have to step back and look at things and say, okay, what do we need and who fits those needs? And you've got a lot of work to do on that end. That being said, we return a really good core group of players in the middle of the field that I think are going to help us tremendously from the defensive standpoint. We've been able to add some players, on the pitching side of things to keep us there. We return a sophomore who was a freshman All-American, who's 94, 97 from the left side and was pitching for us on Fridays. So we have a lot of talent in our program. The challenge is to keep that clubhouse, and just to keep the, culture is it's an overused word in any team sport, but man, does it truly matter. And for me, that's the big challenge is that, okay, if we're going to go out and get another player, does he match the values that we have in our clubhouse right now? Because as you well know, you played 162 of them, man, we're playing, 60 of them. And that for me is worth 4 or 5 wins a year. I mean, it's a difference maker.
Kel, how much time we got?
We have a couple minutes. Let me throw something out there real quick.
Yeah.
Just a curiosity. Are you what classes are you recruiting for now? Are you recruiting for 22? Obviously, is done or close to it. What about 23?
Yeah, and thanks for asking, Kelly. I mean, I'm extremely patient. We have 5 commitments in the 23 class. Believe it or not, most parents and recruits they wouldn't believe that, but I'm just ultra patient with this. I don't want to rush it. I don't want to offer kids when they're too young. And it's worked for us. You test it, and that's where we are. And, we're recruiting for, honestly, if there's a 22 out there that can help us, I've got some scholarship money left. And then, there's 23s. We've got 5 commitments. We have 124 commitment, 0 25. So I'm not going to rush this. I think the kids that have to fight and continue to get better because they don't have the offers. Maybe they're the late bloomer, the late developer. That's been our niche here. And so that's where we're going to stay. We're going to stay in that lane until you prove me different. And I think it's worked for us, and we're going to continue to go that route.
Scotty, I was going to ask you if we have time, right, Cal?
We have a little time.
Okay, I was just going to ask you, how is your catcher? Is he a good, strong defensive guy? Is he aware of what's going on out there?
Man, you need to come watch us play, Denver. We have a 5th-year catcher who has called his own game for the past 2 years. He watches video, he breaks it down. He's a little guy. He's a left-handed hitter. He's our leadoff hitter. So our catcher hits leadoff, which is very rare. It's a unique profile. He's an extremely good student. He's a 4.0 student. The day that I don't write him in that lineup in the leadoff spot, it's going to be a sad day. But he's phenomenal. He just does everything. He knows his priority is our pitching staff and how he can get those guys better. He is just, I have to tell him not to catch bullpens because he's just so engaged in what they're doing. Just a phenomenal kid that, again, there's another one, to your point, Kelly, that wanted ACC offers, and we just stayed patient with him. And eventually he chose us. And it's been, he was a freshman in 2019. And so you've got 19, COVID, 21. So he's never experienced not going to the postseason with our team. And he's a direct correlation to our success, and somebody that he had a chance to sign. Matter of fact, some of those analytical teams like the Orioles were looking at his on-base percentage and his body of work. And so it was kind of up in the air, but we're going to get him back. And phenomenal kid, and somebody you would love to watch play.
Absolutely.
Scott, Cal Sr. was my catching instructor. Probably the most influenced of anybody. It had to be him, and he was great with his own son. But we had a special relationship, and we used to do some different things that I like to talk to young catchers about, maybe just to open up their mind. Most of your guys are old enough to know, the situations and what guys are not good breaking ball hitters. But when the big boys get up there, when you define who you do not want to beat you in that lineup, I always used to think backwards, and it helped me so much, especially down the stretch, the last 7-8 years of my career. I always think, where do I want this guy? He can have his base hit if he wants it. They're a big guy. So if you had a good fastball down in the way, that's usually the pitch that would work for you. You get that ground ball. He gets his base hit to the opposite the way, and all he did was set up the double play. Because Cal always taught me to think 3 batters ahead. Who's the guy behind the big guy? Yeah, give him his base hit. Don't get hurt trying to trick him and doing shit like that, because they'll hit their doubles and their home runs under those circumstances. But if you can give him the base hit and still keep that double play in order, so many times it got me out of trouble. Might not be a bad hitter hitting behind him, but a guy that might be a little more susceptible than the one you're really worried about. And boy, did it ever work with the Dodgers in 1988 when we went up against the Oakland A's and those big monsters. The best and most powerful team on paper in the history of World Series. And we were the worst team in the history of World Series. We ate them alive in 5 games. We made one mistake. We missed that fastball middle in, and they won their one game. But outside of that, we ate them alive. And I was so surprised it turned out to be one of the easiest series I ever called pitches for. And I know that's what catchers look for. When they can get you through tough times like that, they're worth their weight in gold. I don't care how big they are.
Well, you had some good ones, man. I mean, Mike Boddicker and Tippy and Palmer, and I mean, geez, those were some. I mean, Dave Stewart. I mean, you had the luxury of seeing some really good arms, and that's pretty cool, man. I mean, that's a whole nother. I'd love to have dinner with you and break it all
down.
We'll
have to do that sometime. We
will
do it
awesome.
sometime. You know what? With Boddicker and Mike Flanagan and Scotty McGregor, every now and then I'd make them change a release point. Catchers don't think about that because pitching coaches don't encourage it. But every now and then when you get in a tough spot, you have that guy drop down from the side and the hitter's totally surprised. Righty, a breaking ball from down under from a guy who's really over the top like Boddicker and Steve Stone and those guys were. My God, Steve Stone won 25 games when he'd never win more than 12 in his life. I said, throw that sidearm curveball, throw it in the dirt. He'll swing at it. And sure as heck, awesome. Man, it worked. It worked. I'm excited for you. It sounds like you're going to have a good year because you're pressing hard.
Well, thanks, man. It's an honor to be with you guys, and thanks for the exposure for the program. It really means a lot. I mean, it's a special place here, and anytime we get a chance to talk about it, I appreciate it.
You betcha. Coach Scott Jackson of Liberty University. Thanks for joining us. Good luck in the recruiting battles, and we're going to be watching you. I might drop you an email here by the end of the evening, so keep your eyes open for it. That's all the time we have. I think we just heard Rick's parting words. From all of us here at the Prospect Blueprint, keep your chin in and your eyes on the ball. Have a good night.